Hey guys, welcome to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. I'm Joe Klemczewski, founder of the Diet Doc with Dr. Kori Propst, our health psychologist and vice president. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been building up to, which is how language, our own language, affects our mind, our behavior. Kori, this is going to be a good one. I love this topic because this is a big part of my interest in neuropsychology, social psychology. So tell us what we need to know.
Yeah, for sure. It's something that my clients and I focus on a lot together when we're in session, and I'm literally listening to the words they're using and the language that's coming out of their mouths, because I know that it's impacting how they're feeling and the actions they're going to take. So I was in a session recently, and my client said, "Am I smart enough for this?" She was explaining something that she'd gone through just the day prior, and she felt herself getting a bit overwhelmed. And the thought she noticed from her mind was, "Am I smart enough for this?" And, you know, like you said, Joe, we've talked about how the words we use prime our brains towards specific actions or repetitions of patterns of behavior. So, you know, what I want to say about this first is how we can all become more aware of how our language affects us, and not just making lists of here are the thoughts that my mind makes and comes up with, but when there is a thought, we can tune into our bodies to really feel what they cause. So this question for my client, am I smart enough for this? It led to a sense of stuckness, and she felt herself like tighten up and get rigid. And it almost felt like there was an anxious feeling, and she kind of felt like she was suffocating, like she wanted to run away. It felt very threatening for her.
Those words slowly, literally make us who we are.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just no question. It's a spiral. I mean, it's just they loop together, and then those behaviors, make us use more of that self-defeating language. And
yes, the spiral, the downward spiral into a hole. Yeah. So she felt very threatened, and she started what happens with that spiral is then she starts looking for all the reasons that she's not smart enough. Yeah, there's this and there's that, and I failed that time. And so looking at that specific thought, am I smart enough for this? There was one simple word change that could create a completely different attention and feeling. One word in the very front of that, and it's the word how. So this, how am I smart enough for this, orients the mind toward looking for the ways in which she's already smart enough. Well, I've already done this, and I accomplished that, and I was successful at completing that. And there was this one time that, so the brain starts navigating all the memories that are aligned with, here's how I'm smart enough. And then that, of course, leads to more motivated action. We feel expansive then, and it like we want to move forward instead of backward, and we're not stepping on the brakes anymore. So, there are plenty of studies, Joe, that show how incredibly influenced we are by words. And one of my favorite, she's a psychology professor at Harvard. And one of my favorite books that she wrote is called Counterclockwise. I don't know when I read this book years ago, but her name is Ellen Langer. And she's run a number of experiments demonstrating how words can actually prime our minds towards different behaviors. She did one study where she randomly assigned two groups of people. One group was doing a regular crossword puzzle, and the other group was doing a crossword puzzle with words linked to aging and oldness and old age. So they did the crossword puzzles, and then she timed both groups in terms of how long it took them to walk from the lab to the elevator, right? And the group primed with the old age words in the crossword puzzle walked significantly slower than the other group. she did this classic study, and I've written about this before, but it's been a little while, in 1979. And this is one of the big ones she talks about in her book. Totally worth a book worth buying, guys. Where she demonstrates the power of priming the minds. If I can, I'm going to read just a little bit about what this study was. So it was in 1979. 16 men in their late 70s and early 80s were recruited to join a study on reminiscing. That's what they're studying, reminiscing. So Langer and her team converted an old monastery into a 1959 themed retreat, complete with old Sports Illustrated magazines and music and movies from the era. So the control group was asked to simply reminisce. You know, you guys get together and just talk about your lives in 1959, okay? The experimental group was asked to act as if, okay? It really was 1959. You guys are back in 1959, right? Speak and act and live as if you are in 1959 right now. So they tested the men before and after, and Langer and her team discovered that on many of the measures, the participants literally got younger. So the experimental group showed greater improvement in joint flexibility. They tested all of the stuff before, and then they tested it after. Joint flexibility, finger length, so their arthritis diminished, and they were able to move and strengthen their fingers more, and just general manual dexterity improved. On intelligence tests, this is just so awesome to me, 63% of the experimental group improved their scores compared to only 44% of the control group. And we could probably relate that to just having the interaction and the support of, you know, their comrades and friends. There were also improvements in height and weight and gait and posture. And then they asked people unaware of the study's purpose to compare photos taken of the participants at the end of the week to those submitted at the beginning of the study. And the objective observers judged that all of the experimental participants looked noticeably younger at the end of the study.
It's like she found the fountain of youth here.
Right? All through priming the mind. This was all in their heads.
Literally changing their entire physical structure and everything.
Correct. Yeah. Guys in their 70s and 80s.
Can I give you a couple examples on this, kind of a positive and a
Please.
negative? So I mentioned, I've said this before on the podcast, as a New Year's resolution this year, I swore I'm never going to say the words "I'm busy" again.
Yes.
Because I just get so tired of hearing people banter that around that. Instead of saying I'm busy, I'm going to say I have all this opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely, it has changed so much about my work flow and just happiness and contentment. It's just been a night and day difference, just that one little thing.
It's like the power of possibility. Something that I think of when you say that is, instead of I have to, I get to.
But how many times do you say that? Hey, how you doing? Oh, busy, busy, busy. Everybody's busy. I'm busy. Like when that's always your go-to, and to eliminate that from your vocabulary completely, and instead change it with possibility. But here's this weird example. So I'm on an airplane this weekend, and immediately I sit down. Guy in front of me starts aggressively proselytizing this gentleman next to him, and he's using this language, you know, and it's like, and I mean, you know, pretty soon the other guy's getting very defensive, and they're, you know, because there are so many different denominations between who's who, they finally get to a point where, okay, at least we're in the same club. Because at first things were escalating and this guy was aggressive and just being a total ass.
So it's you versus me.
Yeah. And I'm just watching this from behind. I'm like, yeah, I know where this is going to go. I'm just going to put on my headphones. But by the end of the thing, the end of the conversation, the end of the trip, once they had realized they were not mortal enemies, they felt like they were in the same club. The aggressive guy leans over at the end and he's like, hey, brother, it was great to meet you. If I don't see you again, I'll see you on the other side. And it was just this like, oh my gosh, like it was like this warrior battle language, and it's us against the world, and now you're my comrade. We can go fight together. And I'm like, that's this guy's life. Like, he looks at every human being as you're in or you're out. I'm going to convert you or kill you. Like, and I'm like, that's language. That's, he believed one little thought, and now that controls his entire life.
Mm-hmm. That's it right there.
Yeah.
And you saw the behavior that came about as that one thought, like super aggressive.
Yeah, there was a part of me that wished I was the guy sitting next to him. It would have been a whole different plane ride. But anyway.
You could be like, I'm a social psychologist, and I'd like to help you understand what's happening here.
You better tighten up your seatbelt, buddy. This is going to be a long ride.
I have a lot more examples we could go through, Joe, in terms of wording, but it might take us all day. There's so many, just easy ones. Like I talk about when we're naming an emotion, we can say, this is an experience of anxiety instead of I am anxious.
Let's go through a couple.
Okay. So for someone who has some food rules and is setting up some guidelines for themselves that are important to them, instead of I can't eat this, I choose to eat, fill in the blank. That's empowering. Instead of like you have an overseer and a dictator telling you, what you can or can't eat, and it's very black and white. Instead of this is impossible, how can I look at this differently? Now we're like your examples, like now we open up to the possibilities. I'll miss out on fill in the blank. Let's use food as an example. If you've said, I only eat dessert once a week. That's my rule. It's healthy for me. I feel better doing that. Like that's what Kori wants. The food demon may say something else, but whatever. That's the food demon. The food demon may say, oh God, you're going to miss out on all that yumminess and that flavor, and like it's something that you and Ben share together, and he loves frozen yogurt and blah, 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 whatever. You know what? By doing that behavior, this is what I'll actually miss out on. Me feeling in control, me feeling powerful, me getting to the weight that I want to, that, I feel a lot more confident, in my body when I weigh that. So that's another switch.
So instead of saying I only eat frozen yogurt once a week, you could say I get to eat or I'm choosing to. I choose to have this once a week. And so Correct. It's more of a positive, I'm looking forward to it, instead of a restrictive.
Exactly. Yeah. It opens us up instead of like closes us off and down. I've heard this with weight loss. It's like, when we lose something, we're looking for it. We don't want to look for the weight that we lost. We want that it's gone. Like, so if you try changing the language to, I let go of that weight long ago, or I released that weight. It's kind of, we use release and let go of in more mental health sort of terms and mind-based stuff, but let's use that for our bodies too. I don't want to look for that weight again and have it in my life again. So.
No, I'll close with this because it's something that I've heard. If you remember 3-4 years ago at our Diet Doc annual conference, I themed it, say yes. And a couple of our program owners still reference that. They're like, that changed me. That changed the course of my business because it's turning a negative into a positive. It's just, if a client wants this, a client asks for that, a client says, do you do this or do you do that? Say yes. I will find a way. I will find a way to provide whatever you need. It's never yes or no or maybe or but. It's just yes. Absolutely. I will do that.
Opens us up.
Yeah, that's awesome, Kori.
Awesome.
All right, guys. So the power of language, priming your mind. I've loved this group of episodes, Kori. Thank you so much. And for you guys watching and listening, hang tight. We'll see you for some more episodes in the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, guys.